Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, everyone. I hope you're doing great and you're spending still an amazing Ramadan. Uh, this video, I'm doing this video after watching the debate, the debate that Muhammad Hijab did in Oxford. First of all, may Allah reward him for all these efforts, and I urge you guys to really support initiatives like Salam and other people who are trying to counter really either lies against Islam or just show and make people understand what Islam is about. Now, again, as always, not to make the video too long, it was really interesting. We had CosmicSkeptic on the panel, and objectively speaking, again, I really think that the winner of the debate was clear. I mean, the arguments that were proposed by the Muslim team, in a sense, were very strong, and it seemed really like the atheists were not used to face this type of preparation, in a sense. It's also true that Muhammad Hijab was trained to fight, in a sense, in the arena of Speaker's Corner, where people just without preparation and so on and so forth, without waiting turns, they just propose, you just put out their doubts and so on and so forth, and you need to really think and study and really understand the concept if you want to give a satisfactory answer, if there is an answer, of course. And there were some interesting parts, and especially the exchanges between CosmicSkeptic and Muhammad Hijab. They were really interesting. And again, the proposal of the contingency argument as proposed by Muhammad Hijab was very strong, and I proposed a similar example, a similar argument in some other of my videos. So this is it. I urge you to watch the video. And yeah, it's I mean, one of the important thing about this is that today religion is passed off as irrational, as something that backward people support, when in reality that is the opposite. We were educated here in the West to see this story of God as myth. Really, in our textbook, it tells you the myth of creation, the myth of the fact that there is a God that created everything. And so yeah, we need to, as believers, Christians or Jews or Muslims, we need to restore our intellectual high ground based on truth, of course, if there is such a way, and I believe that there is such a way of doing it, and if we are justified in doing so, and I am convinced that we are justified in doing so, to counter irrationalities such as atheism, which again comes with a lot of laggages and dangers, such as the fact of not having an objective morality. The fact that you don't have such a morality means that you can justify basically everything, and that's very dangerous. I agree with you. I mean, I agree with someone who would say, yeah, but to have an objective morality, you have to the proofs of that, you need to prove it. But I mean, most often, even when those proofs are brought forth, you see that atheists just want to be atheists. They don't want to be held accountable in most of the cases. Of course, I'm not speaking about agnostic. I'm speaking about outright atheists they say no, there is no God and blah blah blah. There is no proofs. The proofs are there, and we Muslims, alhamdulillah, are working to propose those proofs, to show you that those proofs are there. Our scholars in the past already did it. We already dealt magnificently with atheism, and it's time for us to remember the world how we dealt with it. So in this video I want to propose a new argument, particular, interesting, and I like to reflect on these things. And when you combine lessons and arguments and you reflect upon it, sometimes you might get some pearls. And so this argument came to me when reflecting on the basically the argument from consciousness, just reflecting on the fact that consciousness is something which is absurd to think that it would just arise from unguided, undirected processes. That's not the scope of the argument of the video. The scope is to use that argument, to use the understanding that we are conscious subjective beings, to understand that we are created indeed by an intelligent being. How? By understanding some fundamental features of reality, and I hope you find it as interesting as I do. So, simply, I will just propose to you a mental experiment, philosophical experiment. So, suppose you have a doctor. This doctor is Dr. Kemaluddin, and yes, I am biased as far as the name is concerned. And Dr. Kemaluddin writes an amazing book on medicine, revolutionary book on medicine. It changes basically the society. It explains amazing things on medicine. It makes use of physics and quantum mechanics and quantum, what's called today quantum biology. And this book is the best book ever written on medicine, and it helps science, medicine advance a lot, and to cure many of the illnesses that we are struggling with today. And so you look this book and you read it, and you look at the back of this book and you look the signature of Dr. Kemaluddin. You decide to meet this genius, and luckily you manage actually to meet him and to speak with him, and you had some doubts on some chapters of the book after you reading, and he explains to you how and why and what the content was about in that book, and how and why he wrote those things. So he clarifies to you the book. So, and you just return home and you sit on your room and you look at this beautiful book and you marvel at how amazing this book is. Now, suppose accepting, for the sake of argument, the idea of an infinite multiverse, and again, for the sake of argument, because you have a lot of problem, I don't believe that you can ever justify an actual infinity, an actual quantitative infinity. But let's suppose you can. Let's suppose you have such a sort of mechanism, which is still contingent and still would require a necessary being who has intelligence. But again, to avoid diversion, let's say that there is such a thing, that there is such a multiverse which just sprouts all types of things, all types of possibility and changes are realized. So you have a universe where the quantum fluctuations produce only ponies and so on and so forth. And then you have a universe just like ours, or actually our own universe is that universe. And what is this universe? It is a universe when in one of the galaxies a supernova explodes. Like a star explodes, dies, goes supernova, and from the basic materials of the supernova, because the materials we are made come from those explosions, those are, subhanAllah, the way Allah seeded, in a sense, the universe with the materials that we find, they come from there, from hot cores of stars and then explode, go supernova. One of these supernova explode and sprouts out the materials, and then these materials are brought together by the force of gravity, and a book is produced by that explosion. The book, I mean, let's say we get to have this book, to look at this book. The book is exactly the same as the book of Kemaluddin. Exactly the same. The same words, the same ink, the same material, the same signature, and so on and so forth. Now the question is there a difference between the two books? Well, actually, there must be a difference, because intuitively you say they are not the same thing, right? You know, that thing was produced by an explosion because of statistical things, and while this book was made because of a will and so on and so forth. Now, the thing is that the difference, what you know. It's amazing. Sometimes we have intuitions, and if you really ponder upon those intuitions, you will understand that they are based on very strong arguments. So in this case, intuitively, we know that the two books are vastly different. I mean, that thing was just made up of an explosion. That thing was done with intelligence and reason. So the difference is, and I just cut the story short, and if you have any question, if anyone has any question, we can speak about it. Well, you see, the difference is abstraction, basically. The difference is that in the case of the star, that was just a mechanical process that brought about that material thing. But in the case of the book in the case of Kemaluddin has meaning. Now, of course, physically speaking, they are the same, but the processes that brought to the creation of the book in the case of the star and in the case of Dr. Kemaluddin are different. Because in the case of Dr. Kemaluddin, those papers, those inks were not put there because of random processes. They were put there because of a process of abstraction. And that's something which is related to language. Now, abstraction is really interesting because it's basically the ability to transcend the material. So, for example, if I have a mental model of trees, I don't really think of a specific tree. As a human being, I consciously say I'm not thinking of any tree in particular, I'm thinking of trees in general. Why? Because I made an abstraction of those of trees. I made a mental model which transcends each and every tree in the universe. And of course, it's not like I have a miniature tree in my head containing the materials and the details of it. So in the case of the book of Dr. Kamaluddin, the words that are written in that book are different in a sense, or what brought those words into those books are onto those book, the book from Kamaluddin, is different because it has abstraction, it has meaning. Now, there are only two ways. Now, I mean, because this process of abstraction, by definition, when you say something which is abstract, you mean that it is mental and non-material. What you're actually saying, in the case of the book, if you say that the book was brought up, has an element of abstraction, it means that there is a mind that brought it into being, which is true. Kamaluddin did it. But when you speak of Kamaluddin himself, and his capacity to bring about these abstractions, then surely you would naturally infer a higher intelligence that created Kamaluddin. And for the honesty really of the argument, I'm not saying it's God. You could argue it's a super mega intelligence, whatever. I'm just saying that Kamaluddin's capacity to produce abstractions must be due to an intelligence. And the difference is this, the beauty of this argument for me is this, even if it's a bit hard to understand, that it can only be proven to be right by the single individual. Now, I cannot prove to you that I'm really conscious, because if you're looking this video, you are conscious, and you know that you are conscious, but you can never be sure that other people are conscious. Maybe you are living in a universe where you're the only conscious person, ideally speaking, right? I don't believe that, but ideally speaking, you could make that argument if you are extremely skeptic. And they made this argument and they call it solipsism, right? So this is the thing. How this is the interesting thing, that only the person who knows for real that he or she is conscious and he's really aware and intelligent can understand that there is a fundamental difference in the production of the two books. Now, in the case of atheism, they don't believe in abstraction, they don't believe in anything that is beyond the material, so the two books are completely the same. But for the one who produced the book, it's not like this, because we understand that one of the books has abstraction. This is the thing. So this is the thing. You have a book which is produced completely by mechanical unguided processes, which does not have any element of abstraction in its creation, and then you have another book which was created specifically through a process of abstraction, and hence the book has meaning. That's the relevant thing. The difference between the two books is that the book from Kamaluddin has real meaning, of course, when connected to a mind that understands its language and so on and so forth. But that's the thing. The two books are not the same, and the element of abstraction that characterizes the first book from Kamaluddin proves that, first of all, the book was made by an intelligence that has the capacity to transcend the physical per se. Otherwise, the two books would be the same, because physically, actually, they are. There is no difference physically. And of course, you also have to think that this capacity to make abstraction, which Kamaluddin has and all of us have, again, cannot be attributed to material things, because otherwise what you are saying is that you are just a marionette. So this is the alternative scenario. Then none of us are really capable of doing any abstraction or having or doing any meaning. We are just like robots or marionettes, or the NPCs, low quality NPCs of a simulation that do not really understand things, do not really have consciousness of things, do not really do abstraction. We look like we do those things, but in reality we don't. Why? Because there is no such thing as abstraction. We are just mechanical process brought out by other mechanical process, and there's no meaning, and there's no purpose, and there's no nothing. So this is the argument. It's a bit complex, I can understand it, and if you have any doubt, please don't hesitate to write it in the comments. I can make further video of clarification. And I will also yeah, I mean, that's it. I have a blog post on that, but it's in Italian because I tend to produce materials on both languages. But I hope it's beneficial, and I urge you also to look back at this video and reflect on it. If you don't understand any part, and please don't hesitate to write in a comment. Again, I hope you will continue to spend a beautiful Ramadan if you're a Muslim. If you're not a Muslim, I hope you benefited in this video anyway, and I greet you with the greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum.